On Monday, City Council enthusiastically backed the plan to create a market district that would be welcoming, engaging, and green. It would replace the existing bus station. The permanent market would be open for business 6 to 7 days a week. In a strong coordinated efforts, councillors, prominent business leaders, social activists and residents put together an ambitious multi-million dollar plan to overhaul the west end of downtown Barrie. It is one of the largest and significant projects to support local businesses and boost tourism in Barrie. A survey of around 2,000 residents showed a big majority of expressing interest in visiting the market frequently. With new condo developments in downtown, the market could potentially attract even more people in the future. The project was kick-started last year. The task force led by Deputy Mayor Barry Ward met 10 times to finalize the proposal. Over the course of 8 months, 7 subcommittees worked together to hammer out details. In the time of online shopping, the proposed center will give visitors and shoppers a unique experience through musical acts and street performances. Local artisans, bakers, chefs, and cooks would get access to large consumers to sell their products. The planned market would spread over 10,000 square feet and have upward of 50 vendors. An amendment by Councillor Anne Marie Kungl made sure it will also have a dedicated community kitchen to help food security and celebrate ethnic food across Barrie. Deputy Mayor Barry Ward presented the plan to the council. He was joined by John Grootveld of the Barrie Farmers Market, Sarah Jensen of the Downtown Barrie Business Association, and Craig Busch, the founder of Busch Group of Companies. Use the timestamps to navigate through the videos.
The one presentation tonight is concerning the Market Precinct Task Force, and thank you, of course, in advance to all those here tonight and who participated in that effort over the last 8 months. I'll now call upon the members of the Market Precinct Task Force to provide the presentation. I understand that's Craig Busch, John Grootveld, Sarah Jensen, and of course, Deputy Mayor Ward. And I will go to you, Deputy Mayor Ward, as the chair of the task force.
Okay, well, welcome. This is the presentation of the Barrie Bayside Market area. I think I mentioned last week that it was a game changer, and I really believe this could be a game changer for, in fact, the entire city, but certainly the west end of downtown. And if I can, I'm not sure who's going to be putting the slides on. Somebody on staff? Okay. And I guess we'll just say next slide when we're ready to go. So, the market. One of Council's strategic priorities is to revitalize the west end of the Barrie's downtown, and our task force was asked for ways to look into ways of making the investments in this area accomplish this. Next slide. Members of the task force for myself, Councillor Morales, Councillor Elwin, who is also the downtown representative on council, and 12 members of the public. There were also many members of the public that we received help from on subcommittees. We had a lot of help from a lot of staff members, both in the mayor's office and other staff, including Stephanie Schlichter, who's the city's director of economic and creative development, and Michelle Banfield, who's our director of planning and infrastructure. I'll probably get that wrong. I get her title wrong every time. I want to give my sincere thanks to everybody involved. They really put their heart and soul into it. And here's our report. The entire task force met 10 times between May 2021 and January 2022. There was also a walking tour of the market area and numerous meetings of the 7 subcommittees. Next slide. This was the area of study as set out in the staff report on the market area. This would be the market precinct they planned. We're recommending a few changes to that. But I think the important thing is the transit terminal itself is circled in red. I think it's important that this is such a perfect spot for a market area. I mean, it's a link between the waterfront and Dunlop Street, and Dunlop Street, which is, as we know, has been doing open air Dunlop, and it ties in very well with that. It's actually a link between Meridian Square and the future site of the Performing Arts Center, which you can see on the extreme left of the picture. It's at the site of the Sandbox, which is our incubator, our business incubator, and I think farmers markets and markets in general can serve as incubators for small businesses. Next slide. This is what we are recommending in a nutshell. Convert the transit terminal to a permanent market, move the Barrie Farmers Market to the block from City Hall, and establish a market district in the surrounding area over time. Next slide. Okay, before we get to that, I want to talk about the survey we conducted. It was mostly online. We had a few volunteers also do in-person surveys downtown and at the farmers market. And the level of interest was nothing short of astounding. We had more than 2,100 respondents. And that's probably a record for any survey the city's ever done. And more than just checking off boxes, more than 1,000 people took the time to offer comments about what they wanted to see in the market, what they best remembered from public markets they'd visited around the world. There was space at the end for people to just put in more comments if they wanted, and more than 500 people actually took the time to make comments on it. Not every comment was favorable, but the overwhelming majority, probably less than 50 people, gave unfavorable comments. We constantly saw people use terms like the vibe, unique, fun, diversity, international when describing what they liked in other markets, what they wanted to see in a Barrie market. Atmosphere was very important. People talked about the sights and sounds of a market, and a surprising number referred to the smells they associate with their favorite market. About half the respondents said they would visit a permanent market. Yeah, here's the slide. At least once a week, while 80% said they would visit a few times per month. By contrast, about 12% of respondents said they visited the Barrie Farmers Market weekly. Just under 40% visited at least once a month. And by the way, when asked if they would be more likely to live in the area if there was a permanent market, 60% said yes. Next slide. When asked what they wanted to see at the market, food was the most common response. 95% said they wanted to see fruit and vegetables. 87% wanted pastries and baked goods. 68% wanted meat and dairy. 66% wanted takeout meals. 58% said flowers, and 55% crafts. Next slide. Asked what else they wanted to see. 77, the highest number was food trucks. 77 of all people, about percent that answered wanted to see food trucks. That was followed by musical performances, which is 72%, 68% wanted craft making, and 64% wanted to see public art. Many people suggested there be a meeting space and such things as cooking classes offered on the site. Next slide. We had a lot of comments, a lot of really good comments, and I think this is a good example of the kind of things they said. They were very excited about the idea of market. People wanted it now. They couldn't wait for 2 years. They wanted to see a market as soon as possible. And my favorite comment is the last one here. Somebody said, "What did you think about the markets you've seen around the world, in Canada and around the world?" And they said, "You left with a good feeling about the city you were in." I think that could be Barrie. People are going to come to our market and leave with a good feeling. Boy, I like that city. They have a great market. Next slide. So what are we proposing? The existing transit terminal building would be converted to a permanent market, which would operate every day, or maybe 6 days a week. This gives an idea what the layout would look like, just a rough idea. As you can see, the police station is no longer in there. One of our recommendations, and we've talked to the police about that, is move them elsewhere in the west end of downtown so we can use the full building. There are 4 things we believe are central to the success of a permanent market. Next slide. A good variety of vendors, both inside and outside the building itself. You don't want people to come in and be disappointed. You want them to come there and be wowed at all the vendors we have. Next slide. A flow-through building. That's the Ottawa market, the Byward market in Ottawa. We don't want people to just come in a front door, shop, and leave like you do in most stores. We want them encouraged to continue on to the rest of the journey, venture through the whole site, in fact, the whole downtown. It shouldn't be seen as just a place where you come, shop, and get in your car and go home. We want it to be a place where it flows into the surrounding area. Next slide. A central area for eating. I think it's very important that markets have a place inside. There'll be lots of places outside as well, but certainly in the wintertime, a place where people can sit, gather in groups, and have something to eat. Next slide. Very important that we activate the area around the market, to give people things to do and see. It can't just be a place to shop. They also have an experience. Today, shopping's all about having an experience. They can shop online if they just want to shop. You want to come down and have an experience. So things like musical acts, maybe street performers, that sort of thing. Next slide, I'm going to turn it over to John Grootveld from the Barrie Farmers Market to take the next section. John.
Thanks, Barrie. And thanks to Council for reviewing the proposal and everyone that's been working on this project to put it together. My name is John Grootveld. I'm the chair of the board of directors for the Barrie Farmers Market. And we're really grateful to be a part of this project and help us grow, as well as help the city grow with its markets and the local food culture in the area. Our vision at the Barrie Farmers Market is, oh my goodness, it's so small, is the primary venue in Simcoe County market to promote local farm-grown produce, artisan work, food, and culinary products while supporting community and culture. Our objectives are providing a venue for Simcoe County farmers to sell their products, providing a venue for Simcoe County artisans, bakers, chefs, and cooks to sell their products, promoting the consumption and production of locally grown, raised, harvested, and crafted products, and fostering community engagement through cultural and social activities. Next slide, please, sir. So just wanted to explain kind of how the seasons work here. Currently at the Barrie Farmers Market, we have 2 seasons, the outdoor season, which is May 1st and November 1st. And that is outside where we have all of our vendors. And then we also have the indoor season, which is November 1st until April 31st. And that's where we're inside currently at the Rotunda. And basically we wanted to expand when we were to transfer over to this new project, we wanted to be able to expand into multiple days as a market. So we would expand our day on a Saturday from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And then adding an additional condensed market, which is still focused on farmers, on Thursday night and doing a bit of a night market, as well as on Friday, having an artisan market. And that's developing our BAM, which is the Barrie Artisan and Makers Market. So those would be the 3 markets that we do during the summertime. In the wintertime, we would have 1 market on a Saturday, as well as special events, different winter events that we could do intermittently. And if there's enough interest to throw in another day in an indoor market, we would do that as well. Next slide, please. So building requirements for the farmers market. When we kind of talked about this and did a study ourselves and researched it, we want to do 10,000 square feet to be able to house at least 50 vendors inside the market. And this is what Barrie was talking about before with having a diversity of vendors. And that's kind of for a successful market, having over 50 vendors year round gives you that diversity all the time. So people keep on coming back and having a good one-stop shop experience. Other things that we need as a market to make it easier for vendors are multiple automatic double door entrances for easy loading, water and power available to not all locations, but at least a good portion of them. We need a storage area for our stuff as the market, and then vendor and public washrooms, and possibly a commercial kitchen to be able to get vendors to assemble some of their products there. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. That's it actually, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, John. We'll turn it over to Sarah Jensen now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Jensen, the Secretary-Treasurer for the Downtown Barrie BIA and a member of the Barrie Public Art Committee. I'm going to be talking about the streetscapes, public spaces, and public art in and around the Market District. The image shown here is Bursey Park in Toronto, a 5-minute walk from the St. Lawrence Market. It's an example of an amazing public space, which can make it hard to believe that up until the late 70s, the land was used as a giant parking lot. The St. Lawrence neighborhood has done a fantastic job with the public spaces around the market. You can explore these places from the comfort of your own home by checking out the St. Lawrence BIA's 2015 master plan, which is available online. If we just copy their homework, so to speak, we'll be in really great shape. But we do have recommendations of our own, which I'll go over now. So for the Streetscapes and Public Spaces Committee, our vision is to create a market district that's welcoming, engaging, and green. The streetscape in the market area will play an important role in creating an identity for the district, making it pedestrian friendly, and forging links to the surrounding area. Public art is oftentimes thought of as icing on the cake, something pretty added when time and ingredients allow, sweet but not essential. But art is a binding ingredient. It helps us connect and relate to one another. It holds us together. It creates shared spaces and landmarks. It will invite market goers to spill out and explore the surrounding area. Public art should be thought of as an essential ingredient, an important and ongoing part of the infrastructure of a market district. Art encourages us to look at things in new ways, and it's through that lens that we should view the market area. Next slide. So that brings us to Simcoe Street and an opportunity to create a better connection to the waterfront. At 5 lanes of traffic wide, the street is a significant barrier as is. We recommend removing 1 lane of traffic on both the north and south sides of the street. This will make room for pedestrians, parkettes, and the expansion of the market. Next slide. We recommend constructing a green gateway around the market area that will create a buffer from traffic and provide a welcoming and vibrant pathway. This stretch of sidewalk along Simcoe Street, for example, could be widened to create a promenade between the Market District and Meridian Place, lined with benches and greenery. Next slide, please. To further connect the market and the waterfront, a raised intersection should be installed at Simcoe Street and Maple Avenue. This will help calm traffic and create a pedestrian-friendly environment. The intersection would also be an ideal location to feature public art as a painted crosswalk. Next slide. Across from the market is the Spirit Catcher and 3 large parking lots. I believe Craig will be touching on plans for the lots long-term, but in the short term, we recommend activating the area by looking into options such as a temporary skating rink in the winter and pop-up opportunities for events. We also recommend consulting with the Chippewa Tri-Council, the Barrie Native Friendship Center, and artist Ron Baer to revitalize and activate the space around the Spirit Catcher. Next slide. As much as possible, we'd like to encourage people to arrive at the market by bus, bike, or walking. This not only helps free up parking spaces, but it creates a greener and more vibrant neighborhood. Even those arriving by car benefit from a more walkable area, as this encourages further exploration on foot. We should extend the flexible and curbless streetscapes of Dunlop Street onto Mary Street and Maple Avenue. Art can elevate the everyday and help promote important ideas, such as using active and public transportation. We should look for opportunities to include it in bike racks, bus shelters, and seating. Next slide. The space between debut condos and the market will make an ideal gathering and dining place, featuring seating and tables. You may notice in the report, we mention seating a lot. As city planner Jan Gell says, only when opportunities for sitting exist can there be stays of any duration. More than just a place to sit, good seating can be an invitation to linger, to participate in public life, to belong. It can create an opportunity for connection and conversation. Next slide. We recommend activating the public spaces in and around the market by making them a gathering place through the use of public art, seating, and playground equipment, as well as exploring ideas such as public art easels, chess or checkers tables, and other opportunities for play and creativity. The market-themed playground and wheelbarrow seats shown here are in St. James Park, a few minutes walk in the other direction from St. Lawrence Market. Programming such as street performers, musicians, and pop-up events can also help animate the space. Activating the area while the market isn't running will help create a safer and more lively place. Next slide. The blue stripe here we took to calling the swoosh.
I just interrupt. I think we've jumped ahead a slide. So if you can go back a slide. Yep. Yep, that's great.
Sorry, 1 second. We're at the one with the blue stripe right now, the swoosh. Okay. The blue stripe here we took to calling the swoosh. Currently, it's the spot where city buses pick up and drop off. But once the transit mini hub moves to Maple Avenue, we recommend leveling the space with a curb to create a pedestrianized area with flexible and playful street furniture. The area can also be utilized by outdoor vendors. As well, Mary Street can be closed to traffic on Saturdays to create more room for the market. Next slide. Last but not least, to crown the new Market District, the Public Art Committee recommends the commission of a signature sculpture at Simcoe Street and Maple Avenue, perhaps incorporating a market sign. Now I'll hand things over to Craig Busch.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward, for allowing me to be on the committee. Council, nice to see you. Really exciting project. I'm really excited about this. I'm almost vibrating. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting picture that I just kind of wanted to start to talk about the parking. This is Little Rock, Arkansas, in their market district. And you'll see that they've kept the waterfront pristine, green with activities and such. Right now in the next slide, you'll see we're primarily parking lots, which is not best and highest use of that space. And you'll also see that they've backed the parking away so that it's convenient, but it's not in the prime locations. Next slide, please. So you see here that we've got a number of parking lots on the waterfront that are not experiencing high usage. We had, apart from these ones, the ones in green, we have several further down that are accessible. And we also have on the top left corner there, the pink one that's privately held parking lot, but it's primarily used for the employees in the building that's primarily Services Ontario and only used during work days. So there's space there that's complementary. And we've been looking at some of the spaces like here, or possibly at the graphics department of Georgian College, where there could be complementary times where the market's volume would be the opposite of what the day-to-day volume is for those work and education environments. Next slide, please. Touching on how we would structure the market, basically the city of Barrie would own a community development corporation, which would hold the long-term leases on all the properties within the market district that are on public grounds. And they would be the leaseholder, they would be the leaseholders, and then we would have a not-for-profit that would collect the rents and such and use that to drive the revenue to be able to activate the space. Most markets that fail from poor activation. So we have to make sure that we're really activating the space. So the goal is use the rents, pay for the staffing and the services to be able to activate the entire market. Next slide, please. And basically what I've covered here, but it's the Community Development Corporation would be the one holding the long-term rent. I think a really important thing to capture here is that the capital spend has to be treated different than the operational. I don't see an opportunity where the operational, we looked at this a lot, the operations can't fund capital contributions. We have to have an operational box with the NFP and a capital build box that would be funded by the city, but also hopefully by provincial and federal government, and also private partnerships. And we think that there's a number of different projects here that we can capture different funding programs for different applications within the market. Next slide, please. What we see in the greeny teal color here is the market boundary that it would for the market district. It would go to the waterfront because it's really important. We've got a dead zone there between the water and the market if we don't activate the waterfronts. So as a connectivity piece, it pulls people from the beach, pulls people from the marina, and funnels them towards the market and into the center of town, which has always been a fair disconnect for us, I think. So that would be the primary area. It does include the debut condo area, and it does include the parking lot, which I can never remember the name of, attached to Meridian Square. Then apart from that, we've got the two orange areas that are opportunities for expansion as we go along. We tried to focus the primary area on city-owned property so that we have control there, whereas the other areas have sort of diffuse holdings. So they'd be an area we'd hope to influence and maybe evolve over a period of time, but we want to stay more, not bite-sized, but more in something we can really control and deliver on and try to influence the other areas till we get them to a certain point. And then the orange llama at the top there reaches up towards, includes the graphics art departments at Georgian College. And then on the bottom, we've got a couple of blue extensions that we consider important connectivity corridors for pulling people into the downtown from the waterfront. So that's what we'll be looking at for the boundaries. Next slide, please. Onto buildings. There are a couple of slides missing, so I'm going to linger on this one a little bit to talk about a couple of things that aren't showing later on in the presentation. But in the waterfront area, there's a few different buildings here, and I'll just draw attention to them. Kind of in the center bottom, there's an X-shaped building. That would be intended to be food, beverage, possible bicycle rentals, skate rentals for the skate path that goes by it in the wintertime. The walking trail would go right through the middle of it. It would have different experiences on all sides, whether it's water, playground, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a collection point. People like outdoor walls. They want to feel like they're in their living room, but outdoors at the same time. So they want to feel protected. I don't know, it's for protection against tigers or something, but people want to feel protected and have walls. So we need to create some of that in order to be inviting. So that's the X. To the left, around the creek, we have an opportunity for an artisan district with maker spaces and such where artisans can be creating, there can be retail. And then we looked at a German beer pub there to be able to serve light food and beer and kind of have an inviting atmosphere. And again, pulling people from the waterfront. That's the segue with art and energy to pull people from the waterfront and into the market district in downtown. The one other thing I'd mention is around the spirit catchers, a lot of potential for pop-ups to be able to activate that space. We've got a beautiful focal there with a spirit catcher when we really need to activate around it. Next slide, please. Oh, I did have the slides in the artisan district. Okay, I was looking at old slides. All right, so this is the artisan district. What we're recommending is really approachable, and I'll talk more on the architecture again later on, but an architecture that kind of blends in with the environment of being around Kids Creek, being close to the lake, and then having pop-ups for, say, German beer garden that's not invasive. They can close down, shutter up, but has an energy and a feel. The picture on the left is from just outside Dusseldorf, Germany, actually a place called Busch, of all places, spelt the correct way. Next slide, please. And then this on the right-hand side is the X-frame that I was telling you about, so that there's the opportunity to have different vignettes, people socialize, have the skating loop in the wintertime that goes right by it, be able to have cider and hot chocolate and create an environment that is 4 seasons. On the left, we've got different events that could be around the spirit catcher, but also pop-ups, little more permanent pop-ups that are movable, but activate the space along the waterfront. Next slide, please. This is just a proposed kind of visual of the marina building that would go where the cadets are in 85 years or whatever. Hopefully we can come to an arrangement where it happens before 85 years, but this would be this kind of a model of what we could do on the waterfront. Again, something that fits in with its environment, really embraces the water, but has a connectivity indoors and outdoors. Next slide, please. This is a bit on the wish list, but at the moment we really don't have anything destinational per se in downtown Barrie. My wife took me out to the Cambridge Butterfly Pavilion, and I really enjoyed it, but there's nothing around it. There's no place to go eat, drink, wander afterwards. When you've gone there, it's a nice experience. It's a little bit of the tropics, which is a really nice thing to have in the middle of wintertime, but it's reputational and people will make the trip specifically for that. So it brings people to downtown Barrie. It also creates a nice environment through January and February for the people of Barrie. So it's optional, but in the realm of destinations, butterflies are cheaper to feed than whales. Next slide, please. One of the things on our list is a Fab Cafe. There's something called Fab Lab that's basically makerspace. The idea is you can take 10 machines, CNCs, 3D plastic printers, drop them anywhere in the world with a computer and make anything that village needs. There is one out of Tokyo that's similar to that, but it's based around a cafe and intended to be more approachable to women and be more welcoming overall. And so it's a great way for helping women to segue more into technology. And it's unique. The only other one in North America is in Monterrey, Mexico. So it's kind of a cool thing that nobody else has really adopted nearby us yet. And I think it's reputational and a very worthwhile project. There's a couple different locations for that. We're looking at spot beside Electra, the transmission station, but that might be a little bit difficult. And we were looking possibly across Maple Street as another option. Next slide, please. Canada's smallest pub. I love Canada's smallest pub. What you may not have noticed, you might be able to pick it up on the top left slide. It's really interesting because when the architects designed the transit terminal, there were no apartment buildings around it. But it's very pleasing from a sky view. They've done things in terms of geometric shapes, rectangles, squares, half rounds, circles. So right at the moment, at the corner of Simcoe And a maple, there's a round circle as part of those geometric shapes. We call it the litter box because it's just kind of a sandy hole right now. But we think that Canada's smallest pub, and it's modeled after outside of a train station in London where they took an old gatehouse and turned it into a pub. And so they have counter height seating where people sit outside, and it's very social, and it creates a great energy and people are just drawn to it. So that's a way to hug that geometric shape and make something that draws people into that space. And then to the left, bottom left, that's a picture of Zurich. Kind of gives you the idea, feel of when people are gathering and you just see it. Next slide, please. So the market extension and triangle building, you saw it on an earlier slide. Originally, when this was looked at, it was the entire transit terminal that would become the permanent market. We looked at the Burger King space, the former Burger King space, as a potential micro market to start this off, but then it was leased and it's becoming the Mexican restaurant, which is great. But if you've been inside here, you'll know that that former Burger King space, even though you think it's kind of on the outside, it eats way into the space. It consumes easily a third, if not 35, 38% of the usable space inside. It's okay. It wasn't a great connectivity space through anyway. It would only be down the hallway because all the workings are in between the two areas. But there's not sufficient space right now inside for proper market. It would be not tokenism, but it wouldn't have the critical mass or experience or whatever. My recommendation is if we're going to do stuff, we need to do it right, that there'll be an exponential return on investment if we do it well rather than put our toes in the water. And so there's an opportunity to go out the other end, the north ends, which is that teal quasi rectangle, to be able to extend out there that way and have a really more open, homogeneous space that's of sufficient size. It still doesn't really allow for seating. So what's recommended is the triangle space within what are the current awnings. If anybody's looked from the top view, the triangle awnings are quite pleasing. And they've been referred to in a number of times in the Bob Lehman report. Debut Condos uses in their images. The overheads are kind of a continuity and have a lot of potential. But what we're looking at is a triangle building within those awnings so that seasonally it could be activities inside, seating for the permanent market, could be overflow for the farmers market. And then dining could be outside under the awnings. I kind of wish we'd had that during COVID because it really offered a lot of opportunity for separation. So it would be these two building, the extension on the permanent market to make up for what we lost with Burger King, and then the seating area, mixed use space in the triangle. And probably about 4,500 ballpark, 4,500 on the extension, about 44,000 square feet on the triangle. Next slide, please. This is just an option and just something we played around with a little bit, but just kind of more intimate setting. What you see here is just kind of potential for a little more density of experience, decorative overhead lighting, fairy lights, that could kind of that energy, that little bit more European feel that you pick up in different places in order to optimize the space beside the Electra transformer building without really blocking views or breaking continuity, and another extra density of experience. And I think we're working with a limited amount of space here. So maximizing the experiences within the space we have is really important. So everything we do should really have some sort of activation and engagement that goes with it. Next slide, please. And then the intention is to have a market that works through all seasons. The use of lighting, in particular outdoor torches and such. Schiffenhaven outside The Hague in the Netherlands is amazing. It's got a beautiful boardwalk, and it's nice during the day, but at nighttime when the sun goes down, it goes, and it becomes firelit. And it's just really attractive, and it creates an energy that draws people. And it leans to allow shoulder seasons, certainly, and then well into the wintertime. The other opportunity for the X-frame building and be able to have dining and more sitting areas there, well servicing the skating loop, to be able to have the marina building overhanging the water with glass and be engaged with the lake the frozen lake in the way we're not able to right now. Christmas market. And if we were able to do the butterfly pavilion, that break from winter with that tropical feel and tropical air. So, and then also the permanent market and the farmer's market, when that's on, the permanent market to be able to get in, socialize, connect with people. So the goal is that this isn't a summer market district. This is like a full 4 season. And I really feel, based on the 4 seasons and the real estate we're working with and the location we're working with and the commitment, that this can be the best market in at least Canada, if not North America. We have a lot of great advantage to this, and I think we can really use those seasons to our advantage. Next slide. Just touching on architectural style. It was really hard in some of the imagery and such. You know, things tend to be placed modern if they're placeholders and such, like say the X building. The intention is that we are a waterfront community. We're a central Ontario community. We're kind of we're within nature. And so our feeling should have a cool modern energy to it, but be grounded, be wood, and be natural to our surroundings and who we are. So these are kind of a couple of examples of the type of architecture that we could pull in here. Next slide, please. So I've read more books on this than I've ever read on business. Seriously. So I've been trying to learn as quickly as I can. And one of the key things they say is plant begonias, which means just start to do some stuff. So you start to get some activity. So pop-ups, containers, that sort of thing are a really easy way to start to activate. And long-term, they're an asset that can be strategically relocated. The goal for us is to be able to have, I think, a flex space long-term, so we haven't anchored ourselves in with any gigantic concrete buildings that we then have to work around and can't move. That goal is to kind of have something fluid that can change and adapt over the years. I don't know what we're going to need. Are we going to need automated helipads? Maybe, but it's not in our next 2-year plan. But to be able to create flexibility and adaptability, and the containers can do that. Okay. And then with regards to Canada's smallest pub, you can see there the sandbox patio. So it's elevated up high. What you can't see is that there's another patio from the Mexican restaurant that's down from that, obviously first floor, but still elevated over the giant round litter box. So there's the potential with Canada's smallest pub to create these kind of 3 layers of activity, all overlooking each other. And I think it's important within the market to have different heights. So it's not all mono. There's engagement happening at different height levels. And there's an easy, quick hit here to be able to do something to activate and say, hey, we're taking an action. There's something new, but we've created a synergistic component of the market in engaging with the Mexican restaurant and the sandbox that's not really in the way of anything else that we're looking at doing. So let's plant some begonias. So I guess in the end, I would urge that we really, private investment follows public, and we've got tremendous opportunity here. And, you know, I think we all know that downtown development is cheap development compared to more spread out development. And the opportunity here is for a few pennies to lead what the private sector sees and leads that investment. And I know if we fully commit to this and do a great job of this, that the private sector will follow with their wallets. Thank you, Barry. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Craig. So we're just got 2 more slides to go, and one of them is the money. And so we did not come up with an estimate of the cost. We came up with a long-term estimate of what maybe this whole vision would cost, but obviously it's going to begin with the farmers market and the permanent market. So the only figures we have are in 2016, the 360 Collective, which did an extensive report, estimated the cost between $5.6 to $6.5 million. That's for the 2 buildings and the site itself. It didn't include the site preparation costs, because it didn't know what the site soil conditions were going to be on the site. The lead architecture report that was commissioned by the city in 2017 estimated the cost at $8.9 million. It also offers some cost savings of about, I think it's 700,000 or 800,000 ways we could save money on that. It included a lot. It included a lot of things about the actual starting of the market itself, soft costs such as marketing and tenant inducements. Those were all included in that. Both those reports include the 7,500 square foot farmers market buildings. We've heard tonight the farmers market would prefer a 10,000 square foot building to suit their needs now and in the future. They don't think a 7,500 square foot building would be enough. The city's 2018 capital budget included $6.8 million as a cost for this. Should point out that there's not a chance in the world the city is going to pay 100% of the fees. We would definitely depend on, same as the Performing Arts Center, we'd depend on other levels of government to help us with the cost. I've met many times with ministers of agriculture in Ontario, and they've all expressed great interest in a farmers market building, the new farmers market building in Barrie. I think we could, I'm pretty sure we can get money for that. I even think there's Simcoe County money that we could get for it because it is going to be county farmers. The operating costs, the 360 collective in 2016 estimated $324,000 to $405,000 in revenue and $324,000 to $709,000 in expenses. Depends on what you include in expenses, and they include a lot of things in expenses if you wanted to include them. Larger staff, security, if they had to pay taxes, that sort of municipal taxes. But it showed that it could break even. The Market Precinct Task Force estimates $550,000 in operating costs. It's in our report, and it could operate on a break-even basis with some maybe some unique funding mechanisms. Next slide. Oops, next slide. Okay, the timelines. 2022 will be for planning the market and seeking funding from other levels of government. Construction cannot begin until next April or May in 2023 because that is the earliest date that we expect the transit terminal will be moving to Allendale, which would mean the market would open in 2024. The lead architects estimated that the design and construction time through a design build would take about 16 months. Last slide. And we'll take your questions. And just a reminder, a lot of the things you've heard today are long-term. It shows what's possible there. The motion tonight is just asking us to approve this idea in principle and to hire a consultant with expertise in market to talk about what are the next steps. Our planning staff has already come up with what a lot of the next steps should be, and we're going to follow that. And that's what we need money from. We're saying take money from our community benefits fund to use to hire a consultant to come up with the plans for the market, including gauging how much interest is there and what kind of money's out there from other levels of government. And I will take, all four of us will take questions now if you have some questions. And nobody was saying first tonight. Jim, you still got that over us.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Ward, Craig, Sarah, and John. So much in this, so many exciting ideas and pieces to it. And, just by way of a really quick hot take, I think when this task force started, there was a recognition that there were a whole bunch of small to medium-sized projects that could occur in a precinct that would be transformative together. But, you can do them in different ways at different times. But, when you see them all together in the way that you just presented them, it's a completely different district. I mean, if you think about the way the West End is today, and you think about the way it would be, some of the images you showed us, some of the descriptions you showed us, it truly would become just a gem. Thank you so much for all of this. Okay, so I'm sure there are questions from members of the General Committee, and Councillor Kungl, I saw your card first. Go ahead.
So we've talked a bit about commercial kitchens. I'm a strong advocate for that. I know some of you around the table have spoken to it. We've heard from the Simcoe County food table about that. I was really happy to see it also referenced through your surveys from the public, and also through the supplementary information around seeing it as part of the extension of the farmers market. So I'm hoping to maybe add something later this evening to really specify that so it's not lost in some of the design, because we know that that is a high cost item. But I was wondering, and so it's kind of a broad question, so go to wherever it's relevant. Considering space constraints and ideally the use of a kitchen, and whether or not it's possible or a phased approach. Through COVID, I've seen and heard where restaurants kind of pivoted and they've used their space for businesses in the mornings when they haven't been serving lunch and dinner. Either less the kitchen, but more of a drop-down workstation, activating it, you can pop in for coffee. Knowing that Mexican restaurant is there, and I think it's amazing, but considering the vision for this, should there ever be, opportunities to utilize that space outside of their operating hours? Do you envision something like that? Or should that space ever become available in the future, just through general transition? Would you be recommending, or do you have thoughts about how important it is for us to retain that space and broaden the scale and scope of our market?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like you. I think the community kitchen is so important. For businesses and them being able to kind of move to the next level. That's kind of one of the best things about the farmers market, is that you can start from in your home kitchen. But once you want to start reselling or going into wholesale and all those other things, you're going to have more restrictions, and you're going to have a registered kitchen. And that would allow some of our businesses to start incubating out of the farmers market almost, right? Like moving up, so that they could go from their home kitchen to a commercial kitchen that we have available, to then possibly their own site. Think of like Homestead Bakery, right? That's a perfect example of kind of like the steps that you could see happen. And the commercial kitchen is so important for that. And then also there's so many, like even just from the farmers market, like there's the Syrian family that does food there every week. And I was just thinking, like, a perfect example, like for them to rent out the hall and do a dinner for 100, 200, 300 people. It could be really interesting to activate the space in that way for these like big gatherings in the future.
Well, then I guess I will maybe start by asking, part of some of the, I guess, initial talks about this market, what I did like that kept on reoccurring was that you were going to integrate some of the existing businesses that we have in the downtown core and invite them to be a part of this market. And unless I missed this, then correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't hear that in the presentation. Is that still your intent, to give local downtown restaurants, local downtown flower shops, local downtown coffee shops, whatever the shops may be, first crack at maybe opening up? And if they are, if you can expand maybe on what that would look like, a full-fledged shop, or would that be maybe a partial shop?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we're going to give preference to them, but it certainly will give preference to local businesses. I mean, everything we heard from people from other markets, they want it to be authentic. They want it to be local people. They don't want it to be a McDonald's franchise. They want when they're in there buying a coffee or buying vegetables, they want to be talking to the owner. They want to talk to the person themselves. I mean, that was very important, that it be authentic. In terms of if somebody, for example, had a restaurant downtown that wanted to open up another restaurant in here, it's certainly possible. I mean, we're not going to give them preference, but it is going to be a good preference to local people to open their businesses in here. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but.
Well, it does. You don't mind, Mayor, let me just freestyling here.
I'm not sure quite what you mean by that, Councillor McCann, but keep asking questions.
Just mean not going through you every time I have a question, just going directly to Deputy Mayor Ward or Mr. Busch.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Thank you. And so maybe that does open up a question. Maybe I can get Mr. Busch to maybe add his 2 cents, because I have been in a few discussions where there was different discussion, and have you landed on something a little more solid, or is it still up in the air?
Mr. Busch?
As far as incorporating downtown businesses or Barrie businesses into the market?
Yeah, let me ask the question again, and I'll reframe it. Just that in earlier discussions I had with you and some of your team, you were mentioning that you were going to take some existing businesses in the downtown core and maybe give them preferential treatment to allow them to maybe, if it's J'adore, maybe J'adore wouldn't have a full-fledged cheese shop. Maybe she would have a 35%, 25%, a version of her store. And there would be, a salesperson there saying, hey, if you love these products, the head office or the head store is just down the road on Dunlop Street, just to get that flow going. And I thought that was a great idea. And so I didn't hear that tonight, and I thought that was a great idea, and I'd like to see that. And so Deputy Mayor Ward had mentioned that there will not be any preferential treatment for the downtown. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'd like to get your insight on that, please.
Yeah, I can't answer that on behalf of the committee, because we didn't get down to that sort of granular level. for me personally, I've always thought it should be a great segue for people to get exposed to other downtown merchants and kind of get a feel for their products. So there's a draw to go get the wider sampling. But say if we're talking a homestead, maybe they would offer some products there as part of some collective, but they would also potentially be supplying the bread for sandwiches and that sort of thing. So there'd be different synergistic opportunities. And I think there's probably 100 shades of gray there. So overall, I'm not sure that we're going to promote an advantageous necessarily pricing model for downtown merchants, but I think we'd be looking for those opportunities. And I think the pop-ups actually do create great opportunity, and potentially the artisan district for kind of helping ferment local entrepreneurs. But those are just more, we never went to that granular level. Those are in my head. That's my head talk.
Okay, well, if you don't mind me staying on you, Mr. Busch, I would like to push for that. Where would I have that opportunity to push for downtown businesses to have first crack at the market?
Yeah, do you know anybody on council? I think that would be the place to start.
Hey, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 friends on council. So how else can I? So basically, you're saying that the consultant's going to come and do the report, and that'll come in a year or so, I'm guessing, right? I think I heard Mayor Lehman or Deputy Mayor Ward say that, and then it comes back to council, and then that's when that decision can be made.
There's enough people here that have come from business backgrounds. If you wanted to get this done, how would you get it done?
Okay,
I don't know.
Well, that's helpful. Yeah, that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Councillor McCann, I really liked your questions and specifically your comments about how this doesn't just happen overnight. There's so many people in this, the committee members, the subcommittee members, Mr. Busch, the people that have been, holding the baton from at one stage or another. And specifically, I want to give obviously huge credit. Mayor Lehman, you put this on the radar in 2010. I remember being in a grade 10, 11, 12 class, and you were giving me homework then apparently because we had to talk about it in class the next day. But putting it on the radar and having that discussion start is what led this. It almost reminds me of Mr. Busch, your presentation so many moons ago about something called the sandbox. This, right? So this gets put on the radar and all the people coming together. So my question, doing that evolution of the last 11 years or so is how, and I don't know who this goes to, it might go to Mr. Grootveld or Mr. Busch, how are we going to ensure that this is viable all seasons, specifically winter? I had to go quickly down to the bus terminal earlier today to do a quick interview for CTV regarding this, specifically like what was the BIA's kind of like feedback on that, not the committee's. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing slush, I'm seeing some people engaging, some people maybe didn't want to do. So how do we ensure that this is successful with winter in mind, knowing that Barrie does get a lot of snow? Is that is there some idea at the moment, or does that evolve as we program it?
Yeah, I'll go to John on this to start, and because he and I had a chat late last week a little bit about the plans for the market year round, the expansion plans for the BFM specifically. And then Craig, I know you've done some thinking as to how we create this make this a 12-month a year district, but John?
Yeah, so as of right now, the Barrie Farmers Market is operating year round. And I think that one of the issues why it's not as much of a draw in the city currently is because of the restrictions that we have as the farmers market and the size that we are. And that's why we're really recommending having a large building to be able to have a diversity of vendors and a large enough skilled businesses to be able to serve people as a one-stop shop and be that draw. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to grow from, let's say, 25 to 35 vendors inside up to 50 to 75 vendors inside, being able to be a bigger draw, as well as adding in other events such as Christmas markets and other mid-season events into the spring, such as other BAM markets or Barrie artisan and maker markets that you could spill out into that market area as well. We definitely have some recommendations in regards to activation in the winter time. And since we already kind of have a current customer base and a current draw that we can already transfer as we start into the market, we're going to bring customers down there. We're going to bring vendors down there right away to the start. And we're going to be there year round, 51 weeks a year. We don't cancel markets except for Christmas. And the goal is to build up to that over the next 3 years and kind of reach out to the rest of the city of Barrie so that they know that we exist and we exist all year round.
So what I'm hearing, John, is you've got a built-in scalability model. You're scaling into the space as you grow, as you pivot, as people respond to you. You've already got that built in. You're not like moving in there with a plan and then responding to if it goes well or too poorly. You've already got that built-in sliding skill, I guess I would say. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Like we're basically building like a 3-year plan to be able to ramp into this project. And that would include doing markets in different areas in the city, such as going into different city-owned properties such as Allendale, Holly, Eastview, those kind of properties, to be able to connect with the community so that we can bring them into the downtown core once that they know that the project is built, and we've built a good marketing kind of runway into this project so that the vendors that are coming there up to 100 in the summertime plus and up to 60, 70 in the wintertime, we want them to be able to be successful when they get there as well.
Okay, I had just a couple. First of all, thank you, of course, so much for your work. And, there were 7 subcommittees, Deputy Mayor Ward, I think. So I know there were a huge number of people involved in addition to the 4 of you and Councillors Aowen and Morales. My first question is for John Grootveld, and it is something we had a quick chat about last week, and it was touched on in the presentation tonight. You see this as the new home for the Barrie Farmers Market, and the timing, the 2 years to get to it, gives time for BFM to grow. And one of your strategies for growing is pop-up markets in other areas of the city. I think I heard that right. Is that something that you'd be seeking to start right away in say the summer of 2022, if COVID and everything else permits?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely looking into making that viable between our staff and everything else like that, and kind of making plans for it. So we really want to do it because especially our board now, we really have a growth mindset and where we're going. And it's a really big move for the Barrie Farmers Market. Like it's 176 years old, coming on 177 this year. So we haven't really moved in a long time. So to be able to move down to a different location, we really have to make sure that it's done right. And we really want to make it successful. And we want to involve as many people as we can within the community, from the individuals to other organizations, and just have more and more people involved so that when we do have this, there's no questions asked if it was worth it, because the experience is so good between everyone involved. So so being able to do those pop-up markets, I think it'd be really important just to engage the communities that we don't always see down there, or it's just hard to get down there. So just to start engaging with the community and really going at it with a growth mindset, like I said, and really growing as an organization.
That is music to my ears. It's really nice to hear that the board has that sort of mindset and also wants to be present. Take the opportunity to get out and introduce yourself to people in other areas of the city as part of growing towards a bigger presence at this location in the future. I guess my only other question really on the presentation, I have a couple of comments or questions on the motion, but we'll get to that, is for Craig. And Craig, you've walked us through, we've been having these conversations for years. You walked us through a whole series of potential, I guess I'd call them interventions or projects, which are very exciting ideas for activating that sort of unfinished corner of the waterfront. I remember when we commissioned this task force, I remember saying to council that this was sort of the last piece of the waterfront master plan that we had never finished. And Sarah so eloquently talked about how the public realm can really be turned into more of a people place by activating it with art, by activating it with connectivity to the market itself. And certainly that you seem to have the same vision. So my question around all of those activations, you have the shops along the creek, or the sort of booths along the creek. There's a German beer garden, the world's smallest pub, potential for a butterfly conservatory, which you didn't talk about, I don't think, was the skating trail, the walking trails through the site, and the fact that these former parking lots really would become sort of public open uses. So it's not just about vendors and expanding the market piece, but also adding some real public features that everybody would be able to use. So I wanted to ask you if you could say a bit more about that, because I think even just going back to that first image, the skating trail in that area is such a great piece to add, you know, for the 3 or 4 months of the winter. Can you say a bit more about the vision that's in the task force's report here?
Sure, Mayor Lehman, I'd be happy to. I think we're a fairly active community, so physically active. So the opportunity to connect again with cycling, with walking, with skating in the wintertime. So the intention was to have a skating loop that could be self-contained and within that area, so that people and families could spend time together and then stop and have hot chocolate together or grab a meal or whatever, so that it's more of an event. It's not a one-off going to, there are some skating trails in the woods and such, you can go do those, but that's all you're really doing. So I think we're talking about experiential. For me, my vision of the market would be that wherever you are, that's the place to be, that you're not just walking past stuff for a destination that's across the park. Wherever you are is a great place to stop, sit, have a coffee, have a beer, socialize, connect. I'm not worried about Councillor Morales. I'm not worried about the winter. We hadn't gotten as granular as slush, but we're Canadians. We go out in the wintertime, right? I notice we eat in restaurants in the wintertime. And I think if there's anything COVID has taught us, is that we really do crave community and connection, right? And I see this as being kind of the center of community and connection all year round. So we're trying to activate it and have those different activities all year round that will bring people out and allow them to connect and enjoy time. I'm not a big fan of winter, but I plan to hang out there.
Thanks for that, Craig. So much in this to be enthusiastic about, but that's all my questions that I sort of wanted to ask following the presentation. I think we can move straight into discussion of the motion, members of General Committee, unless there's any more questions on the presentation. Okay, seeing none. Deputy Mayor Ward, you did hold the item, and as the chair of the task force, I wondered if you wanted to say anything when you put it on the floor.
No, this is just yeah, this is the start. I think it's something, I mean, it's not something we're saying we're going to consider it. I think we are asking council tonight to say, yes, we will do this. We need a lot more information. We need information on the cost, where the funding is going to come from. But I think we are going to move ahead with the project until we hear differently. I think the timing is perfect. I think if we had done this 10 years ago, we wouldn't have a building, of course, but if we had done it 10 years ago, it wouldn't have worked. But I think we need a certain mass of people in the area. And as mentioned in the report, there's more than 4,000 units either under construction or approved in the area within a 15-minute walk. Those are the people that are going to activate the market every single day. They're going to come down maybe 2 or 3 times a week, come down to get their groceries, come down to buy stuff, come buy a meal. I think it's very important. And by the time the market opens in 2024, those people will be moving into the first of those buildings. And we certainly are going to see a lot more. So I think, you know, I think the chances of its success are much greater because of the activation that's going to take place around it. And at the same time, I think having the market there will spark even more development in the area. You certainly see it in places like the Byward Market, which is surrounded by condominiums and apartment buildings now. You see it in the St. Lawrence Market area. It's a selling point. You see people advertising. You know, if you see ads in Toronto, they say, you know, near the St. Lawrence Market, it's a way to sell their condo because it's such a desirable place to live. So I think the timing's perfect. And let's approve this tonight so we can get the information we need to take the next step. Thanks.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. On the motion, which is on the floor, Councillor Natalie Harris and then Councillor Kungl. Okay, as you might imagine, there are a couple of things I want to say too. First of all, an enormous thank you to all of the members of 7 subcommittees and the task force itself. I know Councillors Aowen, Morales, Deputy Mayor Ward, and of course, Craig, Sarah, and John, and so many others put a lot of time into this. And I think when council created these task forces back in March, I sold the chairs, Jim and Barry, on, oh, well, we have 6 or 7 meetings, one a month, and then we'll report back to council and it'll get things moving. And of course, both of them made it much, much more thorough, much more extensive, involved more people. And the results reflect it. The report from Jim's task force, and of course tonight, this is a comprehensive vision for a precinct. It is not just a plan to convert a building to a market, and that was what I had really hoped we would see. So thank you very much for that. It was mentioned this idea has been around since 2010, and full credit to Craig Stevens, then of the Downtown BIA, and who he and I had a conversation around this 11 years ago. But Barry's right, it just would not have been possible. We started to get some momentum behind this 4 years ago, and Councillor McCann referenced the businesses who were involved. In fact, some were from downtown, some were from other areas of the city, like Johnny's Seafood, who actually expressed their intent to have permanent booths here. But what's always held this back was we had to move the buses. And you had to move them somewhere, and we didn't have a bus building ready yet. We still don't at the Allendale GO station. But after the archaeology's been done, after federal and provincial funding, which is exactly what we're hoping for this, there's federal and provincial funding going into our new bus building at Allendale. And now we can finally, after way too long, move ahead. But Barry's right, it's a good thing it's been this long, because the timing is perfect. Debut is under construction. Greenwind Smart Centers is under construction. Those 4,000 new residents are the built-in customers that will ensure the success of this. But I think Councillor Harvey's exactly right. This will be a tourist attraction, not just the market, but the district. I mean, the vision you've portrayed here of an area that has so many things of interest where people will want to come and spend time, not just go to the market, but be in the area. And I think the way that the task force has laid out, and this is why I asked about, Craig, the public realm improvements, it's the key connection point between the waterfront and Downtown Barrie. And, if you had it to do all over again, would you ever put a bus station on your waterfront? Of course not. But in the day, there was a rail line and there was a big road, and the waterfront was actually a little further away because of those things. Today, it makes perfect sense. And what we should have here is a tourist attraction in a district that's going to be a delight for our residents and a delight for tourists. But critically, we'll bring that energy from the waterfront up into the downtown. I love that it's 4 seasons. I think it's another reason why it's a good thing that this work got done now. I think prior to COVID, you're right, Craig, people didn't have the same appreciation for public spaces. Now we got people on patios in February last year. Haven't had the weather good enough yet to put people on patios this year, but hey, who knows, maybe we will. But there's this effort being made now, and you saw it on Saturday in downtown with Open Air Dunlop and Hello Winter. People want to use public space 12 months of the year. They've got a new appreciation for it since the pandemic, and so we can build on that. And I love that you're recommending the streetscape improvements on Mary and Maple to tie the waterfront investment that was made in renovating our beautiful waterfront, the boardwalk, and all of that. We've got this little gap between the marina and downtown, and you proposed a way to complete that. So congratulations, Councillor Aylwin. I think those streetscape improvements are the framework that this whole area will hang on. The other reason it's great timing is what John said about the Barrie Farmers Market. I mean, they have a growth goal, 2 years between now and opening, 2.5 years is a great length. It's a good length of time for the market to grow its vendors, to grow its profile, and for us to help the Barrie Farmers Market do that. So by the time of moving into the new space, it's even stronger. It's already one of the very best things to visit in downtown Barrie, and it will only grow. So, you can sort of see this coming together, right, in a way that it never would have if it was done earlier. In 2 years, 3 years, we've got debut condos, Greenwind condos. We've got a hotel downtown on the, a block and a half away opposite the marina. You've got the new market building opening, and a few years after that, a new performing arts center. I mean, the transformation in the West End is incredibly exciting between these two pieces. So, and I'll echo Councillor McCann's comment. The members of the task force, you clearly brought your energy to this. And what I was seeking with all three task forces when we put them together was, you know, this day was going to come where we're coming out of COVID at some point over 2022. And we need that energy to show our community that we are building back better. We are building, we've got projects with real energy, projects that are going to drive the economy of the downtown, and especially focused on the sectors that got hard hit: hospitality, the restaurant, the food and drink sector. But I love that in this, we're creating opportunities to incubate Barrie businesses as well. So the whole thing, you know, which has a lot of benefit, has particular benefit, I think, right now. So the one thing I wanted to, I was considering as an amendment, and I will just flag that I want to do a bit more work on it before I introduce an amendment, is to support some of these immediate activities. Councillor Riepma, you picked up on the let's get going with some pieces right away. The motion outlines great work that will be done to further the concept. I would love to see some of these things happening in the summer of 2022. So I'm just going to check in with Deputy Mayor Ward after the meeting and perhaps bring something to council next week, you know, to give staff direction, and or if there's some small amounts of funding required to get these things happening in the summer of 2022. But I'll just conclude by saying the task forces, Councillor Harris and Deputy Mayor Ward, blew past all of my expectations and have presented a very exciting vision for the west end of our downtown, and projects that I think our whole community can be very excited about. So thank you for your leadership, and of course to all those who volunteered to be part of this from the community. And with that, I'll call the question on the motion as amended. Those in favor, please indicate. I am as well. That's unanimous. It makes all three task force motions unanimous. Thank you, members of General Committee. And we will say thank you to John, Craig, and Sarah, and all the task force members who are online. Thanks for being here. That will complete the discussion for tonight, and it'll be up at council for final approval next Monday.
That was the update from the recent council meeting. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.